Hey, let's talk about what you need to do in order to service a tankless water heater. To service and descale a tankless water heater, you're going to need a few things. First of all, you're going to need a set of washing machine hoses. You'll need some distilled white vinegar to use as an acid solution. You'll also need a transfer pump to push that through the water heater, and a 5-gallon bucket. I like to keep all of those items together in the 5-gallon bucket for storage when I'm not using them. Let's start off by turning off the tankless water heater. First we'll hit the off button, then we'll need to disconnect the power from the wall outlet. Next, let's turn off the water to the water heater. Service valves like these make it really nice. We can just turn those off, quarter turn. Now let's put the vinegar into our bucket. I usually like to get about 3 gallons of distilled white vinegar. Now that the water heater is off, let's access these service valves. They are made to connect a hose to, so we can connect these washer hoses directly to the valves. This washer hose set comes with a blue hose and a red hose, which is convenient for servicing here, but any hose will work. We can hook those up right to our service ports. This will allow us to run the solution through the tankless water heater without running it into the house. Next, we will set up our transfer pump. We're going to put one hose on the inlet side. That's going to pull the vinegar from the bucket, and then we'll hook up the other side to the hose that's connected to the cold side of the water heater. That'll push the vinegar up into the water heater through the cold side. We're going to put the hoses down inside the bucket. The green hose is going to be drawing vinegar up out of the bucket, pushing it up into the water heater. The red hose is coming back from the hot side of the water heater. It's a good idea to get those hoses secured so that as the pump's running they don't fly out or flood the room. Once the hoses are ready, we can turn on those service valves. That just opens up those ports, allowing the fluids to move through, and we can plug in the pump, which will turn it on, and we start to see fluid motion through the heat exchanger. We're just trying to push that vinegar through the heat exchanger. This needs to happen for about 45 minutes, so we're just going to let this pump run. In the meantime, there are other things we can do on the service. We're going to access the inside of this water heater. I like to put the screws in a safe place, like on top. They tend to get lost. Let's start out by cleaning out the air intake filter. There's a filter that catches any dust or debris that comes through. Have a look at this. Here's our catch for the year. We have a number of wasps and other bugs, some plant debris and lint. You can see why it's important to have an air filter. We're going to clean this out with a simple shop vac. We'll just suck that clean and set it back in there, secure it where it belongs. While we have the vacuum out, let's take a minute and just clean everything. We'll get down inside all the cracks and corners, try and suck it all clean. Another option is that we could put the hose on the opposite side of our shop vac and actually blow it out. That can also really dust the inside. Next, let's take a minute to clean the flame sensor rods. These rods are important sensors that tell the unit that the flame is doing okay, and if they get too corroded, then it can actually shut down the unit. So it's good to just clean these whenever we do a service. You can see there's some corrosion on there. We can take a simple abrasive cloth and just brush those off. This may take a few minutes, but as we continue to brush and sand these off, we can get them to look pretty clean. Let's secure those flame sensor rods back in place. Just put those screws back in. After 45 minutes of running that vinegar solution through the unit, we can be confident we've done a decent job of descaling. When done, we can pump that vinegar down the drain, or we can pump it back into these bottles. That way we could see what we've accomplished. You'll see there's a difference in color here. That means we've been able to successfully descale the inside of the pipes of the tankless water heater. Remember not to run the pump dry, that can burn it up. But now we can disconnect the pump from the hoses. Let's keep the hoses connected to the water heater for just a minute so we can flush out all of the vinegar from inside of the water heater. We can do this by turning the water back on to the water heater for a minute, and then opening up the hot side and just letting the water flow through into the bucket. This is going to flush out all that vinegar. And let's do this several times just to make sure that there's no vinegar left inside of the heat exchanger or the water heater when we turn it back on and start heating water. We can dispose of the water and the vinegar down a floor drain or dump the buckets down a toilet, whatever is convenient. Now let's disconnect the hoses from the service ports. We're done with those. We can put the caps back on and make sure those service ports are in the off position. We'll do that to both the cold and the hot side. Let's leave the water turned off to the water heater for just a minute while we check this water inlet filter. There's a filter as that water comes through the water heater. We're just going to look that over and make sure it looks clean. If there's anything in it, we can rinse that off. Then we'll return that back to the position in the inlet side of the water heater. At this point, we can turn water back into the water heater, so we'll open up both of our valves on the cold and the hot side. Should be about ready for use. Let's also take a minute to check the condensate trap in this unit. As we pull that out, we can see it's kind of dirty. It's just collecting water and dust debris. We can rinse that off, put it back in place. We'll make sure that the retainer clip holding that condensate trap in place is secured. Now we're ready to turn the water heater back on. Let's plug it into the outlet in the wall, and we'll turn on the power to the water heater. As it starts up, we're just going to make sure that everything looks right, that it has the correct temperature. And we're going to want to turn on some water, watch the whole unit run, make sure everything appears to be working properly before we finish up. It's good to go check a faucet and make sure we're getting hot water. Once we have confirmed that we have hot water, we can put the cover back on the water heater. We'll want to make sure that it's set in place and secured with the screws that we have carefully kept. Finally, let's just make sure to write down somewhere when this service took place so that we can keep an ongoing record. Once you've serviced your water heater, it should be good for 1 year. If you have a water softener, it could go for 2. Make sure you do routine maintenance, and good luck with your service.